Hello, everybody. I'm Jeff Phillips, and welcome to this week's webisode. I'm thrilled to have this week's guest. We have Arnie Tokyo Rosenthal. Welcome to the show.
Great to be here, Jeff. Thanks for having me.
Sure thing. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you're up to these days?
Well, what I'm up to is putting out this book. It's been a 40-year project, if you can believe this. Starting in 1977, I had a full-time Yankee press pass, which I got under somewhat erroneous means, for 8 seasons, full access to the Yankees. I was a photographer at the time, shooting a lot of pictures there. And none of them ever were published. I'll explain why in a moment. And they traveled with me from one city, from one coast to another, back and forth over 40 years. And then I decided to put the book out, get these books published, and tell my story about how I got the press pass.
Okay, so what is the premise of the book?
The premise of the book, there's two parts to it. First part is how I got this press pass and how I continued to get it for the 8 seasons. It's very interesting. It's got a lot of the ups and downs and almost getting caught. And then it's also about putting out these pictures. We picked the 130 best shots, mostly from 77 to 79. Interesting years to be at Yankee Stadium, which is where all this took place. And it's an ebook, which can only be, you can get it on the internet if you have Kindle, if you have Nook, Book Baby. You can get a PDF version of it for your computer. You can get anything but a hard copy at the moment.
Okay, so I took a look at the book ahead of time, and I saw some of the photos, and they're pretty good photos. So did you know how to shoot photos, and why did you start taking them?
No, I was originally, my background was video at that point in time. And I was directing a TV show called Sports 77. I was asked to become part of their crew to go to Yankee Stadium, go on the field, and shoot video interviews beforehand. One thing led to another, and I wound up being in charge and the person who would call the woman who would give out the press credentials. The show gets canceled, but I keep calling for the press credentials time and time again. So now I'm going to the ballpark, and I'm almost feeling guilty that everybody else is working, and I'm just sitting there, having ice cream and watching the game. And I always was interested in maybe I could do some still photography. So I got into still photography, took thousands of pictures over the 8 years, and it became a little bit of a hobby out of control. But like I said, none of the pictures, because I didn't work for anybody, none of the pictures ever got published. So I thought it was about time.
Okay. So what separates your photos from, say, other sports photos?
Okay. Well, first, the historic aspect of it. These are sort of, like I read that they found these old Beatle pictures that had never been published, and everybody was excited. Well, when I grew up, the Yankees were the Beatles. Roger Maris, Mickey Mantle, later on Reggie Jackson and Catfish Hunter, all these people. So there's the historical aspect of here's pictures that have been found that have never been seen before. My style of shooting, I knew I wasn't going to compete with Sports Illustrated for action shots. So I was more on the field before the game, hanging around the batting cage, getting close-ups, getting odd offbeat pictures. There's a picture of Sparky Lyle coming out on the field with a bag over his head, like the Unknown comic, but he was the unknown pitcher. And as far as I know, I'm the only one who took that picture that day, and that's in the book. There's Mark Belanger fooling around with his hat backwards. There's the tragic armband picture of after Thurman Munson died, all the Yankees were wearing black armbands. So I would try to come up with something that was a little bit different. I loved being in the locker room after the World Series victories, champagne flying all over the place, taking pictures like that. So I tried to come up with things that were offbeat. I did take my share of action pictures, but even those I tried to make a little bit different. I might focus on what the umpire was doing on a play, where he's calling a guy out at the plate or calling somebody out at second base. So I think they're unique and different in their own way.
Yeah, I mean, I was looking at the book. I saw one, as you're talking about the umpires, of them just kind of like sweeping off home plate, which you don't typically see a shot like that.
Right, and there was a game, I get to the ballpark, and then there was a rain delay. And I shot a picture. I was sitting in the dugout, and I shot a picture of the rain delay as they're putting the tarp on the field. And and it was, you don't know how these pictures are going to come out. Sometimes you shoot the picture and it goes away. Especially back then, too, you were very economical about how you took pictures because it cost a lot of money then. Today, everybody's on their iPhones and smartphones taking pictures at random. Then every shot you took cost you money. Every time you developed, cost you money. Print cost you money. So you don't know how they're going to come out. But I was like real happy with this particular picture, So it was like, and sometimes you take pictures of guys that. The Yankee clubhouse manager, Pete Sheehy, he was there since Babe Ruth had been there. And he was sort of like how you would imagine a 1920s clubhouse manager looking. And I just got this nice portrait of him. So different things.
Okay. So being that you had these fake credentials, were you ever afraid of getting caught? And what would happen if you did?
I always thought every time I went to a game, and I would go like in 78, I went to 50 games plus the playoffs and the World Series, a lot of games. Every time I went, I thought it would be my last time, that this can't possibly just keep going on forever. Somebody's, I tried to stay invisible, but somebody was going to ask me, like, who do you work for? Oh, I'm with Sports 78 or 79. Oh, but that show got canceled 2 years ago. How could you be working there? Well, I am. And I figured what would happen to me, I figured I'd either be escorted out of the ballpark and on some sort of a blacklist and never be allowed at Yankee Stadium again. Or I had this vision of me sitting in front of George Steinbrenner's desk and like going to the principal's office and him offering me a job. Well,
cool.
If you could pull this off, why don't you come to work for me,
Sure.
So, but I never got busted. Over 8 seasons, my last game going on with the credential was October of '84, last game of the season when Don Mattingly beat out Dave Winfield for the batting title. And I moved to L.A. A week later, and ultimately, about 6 months later, became president of a nationwide sports network called FNN Score. So the irony of it was I went from having to fabricate every year a letter asking for a press credential for a show that didn't exist to now I had a credential to virtually any event in the country or the world that I wanted to go to because I ran this sports network.
All right, so let's kind of get into the meat of the book. I'm sure the viewers out there want to know, what kind of pictures are in there, and what are some of your favorites?
Oh, there's a whole slew of them. My very best favorite, which is was a picture that I didn't shoot, and it was the opening day of 1978. And the media relations head, Larry Wall, came on the field and he said, "Don't anybody leave, we got a surprise for you." And as he says that, I look down the runway of the dugout and it's Mickey Mantle and Roger Maris. And this was Lennon and McCartney for me. And all of a sudden I was 10 years old again. And I said to one of the other photographers, I said, "I'm going to go stand between the two of them. You have to get a picture of me with them. Whether they're into it or not is irrelevant. I need this picture." And I stood between Mantle and Maris. And he got the picture. And Roger, very much into the picture. Mickey was like, "What are you doing here, kid?" So that's one of my favorites. We mentioned the Sparky Lyle bag over the head picture, also one of my favorites. And then I learned how to shoot triple exposures. I don't even know how I did it. If I had to do it today, I'd have to really sit and learn how to do it all over again because I have no idea. But I was able to focus on the picture and shoot in 3 segments. And remember, there's no photoshopping back there, folks. This is real. You had to do it the hard way. And I'd be able to shoot the picture in motion. And I have a really good one of Ron Guidry taken in the 78 season when he went 25-3, one of the greatest pitching seasons in baseball history of the triple exposure. And I remember giving him a copy of it and having fun. So those are the common ones. Thurman Munson celebrating in the Yankee clubhouse after the 77 World Series, champagne flowing all over him, having no idea, that less than 2 years later, he would pass in that terrible plane crash. So those are some of my favorites.
So it had to be such a thrill to be, 1, a fan, 2, that you were in there illegally. Did you ever find yourself kind of getting emotionally involved in missing photographs and said, "Oh, I wish I would have taken one there"?
Not in the missing sense. I got emotionally involved the first game back after Thurman Munson's funeral in '79. and taking pictures of the ceremony that was going on in the field with tears running down my face while I was doing it. That was emotional. Taking my father to a game and being able to bring him on the field, because real quickly what happened was I would be able to call up Ann Millio and I'd say, I need 2 passes for this game today. I'm bringing a photographer and myself. Or I'm bringing, and early on the photographer was my then girlfriend, now my wife, Carrie Klein. So one day I called up my father, who was brought up in the Bronx. He was at Lou Gehrig Day, lifelong Yankee fan, responsible for me being a lifelong Yankee fan. And I called him up and I said, Dad, I'm going to pick you up and I'm taking you to the Yankee game and you're going to go in a way that you've never gone before. And I took him on the field thinking, okay, we're definitely getting busted for this, but it's worth it. And somehow we got through the day. Nobody asked him who he was. And he was in a 3-piece suit with a shirt and tie on and everything, and leaning on the batting cage, watching it. And and so it was exciting to be able to take him to a game.
Wow. All right, so Tokyo, these photos are about 40 years old or so, and I'm sure it's great that the public now has an opportunity to actually see them. So, I mean, why now you decided getting out? It has something to do with just the way the world revolves and technology?
Well, one, as I told you, I was inspired by the Beatle find. I said, well, these are, in my world, this was like the Beatles again, finding these great old pictures. But the technology today allows a lot more free enterprise. I didn't have to go around from publisher to publisher, hat in hand. You can self-publish and put out an ebook, and next thing you know, it's on Kindle and it's on the Nook. So I think that affords you the opportunity. Not the easiest layout in the world. I have to mention Kylie Jenkins, who put this book together for me, did a fantastic job. It's not easy doing pictures and words as an ebook, but she made it happen, and the response has been really good. So.
Okay, so I think I know you mentioned 78 to 80, but is there part of the book or some pictures taken more from one year than the other?
It was mostly 77 to 79. What were referred to as the Bronx Zoo Years. It was crazy times at Yankee Stadium. Billy Martin was manager, then he wasn't, and Bob Lemon was manager. Then Billy was back in again. Yogi Berra was in. Yogi Berra was out. Yogi Berra was coaching first base. It was a wild time. Sparky Lyle, who we mentioned, he wins the Cy Young Award in 1977, and they reward him by getting Goose Gossage in 1978, and as Greg Nettles said, he went from Cy Young to Sayonara. All of a sudden, he wasn't even being used. So it was wild times there, and also by condensing the stuff we put out from 77 to 79, it allows us to do a second volume later on of the later years.
Okay, so excuse me. I think we totally forgot to mention the name of the book, which is,
of course,
a Faux Photographer's Yankee Stadium Memoir.
And it's faux, F-A-U-X, as in fraud. And not that I was fraudulent in my abilities as a photographer, but I was fraudulent in my press pass. But a photographer's Yankee Stadium Memoir. And people can find out how to get the book by going to our webpage at www.yankeememoir.com. And that gives you all the different versions and ways you can get the book.
Okay. So to sum it all up, it's basically a combination of all your adventures, near bust of your fake credentials and the body of work that it produced, that being your pictures, correct?
Yeah, and let me just add this. It's not just Yankees, too. I've got pictures of the opponents. There's some great shots of Rod Carew and Mark Fidrych, who pitched for the Detroit Tigers at the time. A lot of Red Sox. When Don Zimmer was with the Red Sox, some great shots of him. Earl Weaver with the Orioles. Nolan Ryan's in the book. Some great when he was with the Angels. So it's not just Yankees.
Yeah. Yeah, being an Orioles fan, I noticed the Earl Weaver and the Mark Belanger. And,
right.
Yeah, so there's some pretty cool stuff in there. And it's definitely worth checking out if you're a sports fan. And if you would like more information, as Tokyo said, go to his website. I will have the website at the end of this video. And if you want to share some comments, please fill out the box below. But that's all we have for this week. Until next time, take care.